What's your thought on the term? We talked a little bit about native plants, but
Mhm.
what's your thoughts on the term of cash crops?
Cash crops.
And what do you think those are?
I guess I mean a crop that makes a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean there was a period of time where I was a weed grower,
Okay. Can you
and
say that again?
I was a marijuana grower at a
Okay.
certain point, where like I grew it for profit, for money,
Hmm.
and yeah, that always like at first, it just seemed like a magical thing. It is almost like a money tree because you growing outdoors. Like I would grow plants that had multiple pounds on them, and can easily sell a pound for like $1,000, and so it is like growing money. And but you really kind of start to see like all like perfect examples of just kind of like the ugliness that can come out of that because like cannabis is a plant and people kind of make of it whatever they will. Like I believe it can be a really great medicine. I think like in our modern society it can become a problem as well. I feel like it's like akin to it's like a psychedelic plant, and like similar to mushrooms, there are some like shamanic traditions around using it in that way. But I feel like yeah, like it's something that's just kind of like misunderstood in our culture, and for a lot of people, I think it hurts them more than it helps them. But like in the other side, like with the cash crop thing, like because it's so valuable, because we put so much value on it, like you get certain like side effects of like violence, like people who are willing to like kill other people over it, or getting robbed and shit like that. Like it's just all this kind of ugliness comes out of placing that much value on it. But like, yeah, from my opinion though, like it is a plant. Like I loved growing it. I'd love to get back to it someday, like just to grow it for my own enjoyment because it's a beautiful plant. It's
It is a
really
beautiful
cool.
plant.
Yeah, smells really good. It's yeah, it looks really crazy. It's like one of those weird things that like so you can trip out on. There's like the strange pattern to cannabis because like you ever seen trichomes under a microscope?
No.
So like the trichomes, it's
I'm thinking
like
of pine cones. I don't know why I'm thinking pine
uh
cones when you say tricones.
so the trichome is basically like what you see as like the frost on a like a really good bud, like when it's frosty.
Okay. Okay.
What those are, like those are basically tiny glands that are producing the cannabinoids. And when you look at them really close, they basically look like mushrooms. Like they're like little see-through mushrooms. And it's interesting because like a mushroom is kind of like a phallus, and
Okay.
then
Okay.
those are growing on what is the female reproductive organ of the cannabis plant. Like you have like these little tiny, like the hairs, like those red hairs.
Mhm.
Those are the dried up pistils of the female cannabis plant, which is essentially the plant's vagina.
Okay.
And then those are form what you get from buds that broke down. Those come from what are called colas, which is like a really big shaft of weed, basically that looks like a giant dick. So it's like a weird like in and out thing of a female and male representation. Kind of continues to go on and on.
Throughout the plant.
Yeah,
Yeah. When you were growing, would you say there was definitely some spiritual aspects to it when you were growing it? 'Cause I feel like
yeah,
I think you were getting upon it. Like, I think we do abuse the plant now. It's being
yeah,
highly abused.
yeah. So for me, like that started like psychedelics in general. Like when I was young and first like using them, I became aware of like the positive sides of like the like how they can kind of like help you be like more spiritual or be able to see that aspect of life. But I feel like Yeah, like when you look at the cultures where those came from, like our culture doesn't really have a lot of experience with, say, like something like mushrooms, like psychedelic mushrooms, um, in like Christian Western culture. Psychedelics in general have been kind of like a taboo thing for like over a millennia,
Hmm.
and it kind of got pushed out of the culture way early on, and kind of like really like the closest thing was like alcohol. It was like the one like mind altering thing that was socially acceptable. And so when we
Except
came
during,
across,
I'm sorry, except like during the '60s when they had like that big.
yeah.
Okay.
Or so that's like really because the psych or psilocybin mushrooms were discovered in the 50s.
Okay.
And then you have you like what's his name, Hoffman, the guy who invented LSD. I think it
Hmm.
goes like the 30s or something. And so up until that point, like really like psychedelics had no place in Western cultures. And then they showed up and it was like the powers that be just kind of freaked out and like made it all super illegal. And as I think like the biggest issue with our culture in regards to that is that like we don't really have a good reference with how to utilize. It's like a super powerful, super useful tool that we like don't really understand how to use. And so it does, like when I was young I wasn't aware of it. Only like as I got older and starting to go to like raves and stuff, I started to see like people using those things in a way that I thought was like not good. Like they're not helping themselves. They're
That
just
part. Yeah,
yeah.
that's definitely a good place to notice where the drug is not being used properly.
Yeah.
Basically, out of nature. It's not being part of. It's not
Yeah.
working with it in nature with it properly.
Yeah. And also like yeah, like you can use it with the intention of like connecting to something mystical. Or I think if it is just for like self-indulgence, then that's no good. And it is kind of like playing with something that we don't understand because it's kind of like opens up these doors, gives you access to something that we otherwise don't. And I think like a lot of people, like they're young and naive or they don't really know anything about that, and all of a sudden they're like opening themselves to these mysterious forces. And I don't know, like I do think as far as like for psychological healing and stuff, like they're really amazing, but like you do need some type of guidance. Or for me, like I feel like I just maybe got lucky, but it was also yeah like certain things that like dark sides of it that I just wasn't aware of when I was younger. But ultimately it did like play that essential role that it helped me a lot, like be a more positive person and like see the love in the world.
And that's also related to like the marijuana and working with and growing marijuana.
Yeah,
Okay.
that too. Like when I first started growing it, it really was just because I really loved weed, and
Yeah. Who doesn't?
yeah, and
Or
that
who
too. Like
hasn't?
I didn't really fully understand that it was even a problem until I was like in my late 20s. Like I was like almost 30 and smoked weed or ingested weed all the time, and it was yeah. Only at that point I started realizing like maybe I shouldn't like be doing this all the time, and that like yeah, kind of like was harmlessly or thinking of it as harmless and just kind of like forming this unhealthy relationship to it, which is like essentially an addiction. Yeah.
When you mentioned like the guidance of it, I was talking to a friend of mine. Shout out to you, Della, and he did the experiment. The not the experiment I want to say, but the experience that a lot of people are doing right now, and I can't think of the term, but they go. It's really big in South America,
Mm.
and you know
The ayahuasca.
ayahuasca.
Uh, yeah.
And he did the ayahuasca with the people that guide him and stuff like that, and take him to that training. And he did it for like 3 days, and it just reminded me of that story about him telling me about how like you need some people around you to kind of help guide you like through the process of what's happening to you, or be there around you to
Yeah.
kind of just made me think about that, about the guidance needed.
Yeah. I mean, that's the sad thing is like a lot of those cultures where they came from, they had experience with those psychedelics for thousands of years. and kind of like we're able to learn lessons. And essentially like a lot of their what they would call shamans were almost like in charge of this institution based around how to take these, what would be considered the right way to take them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess that's really one of the shames is like we have this tool, like it is like this psychological medicine that we really need, like as a people. There's like that obvious need to cultivate a better, healthier relationship with our own selves. And like at that time that yeah, like this medicine is needed more than ever. Don't really know how to use it properly. And it is just kind of like inevitably we're ending up in a situation where like some people just have to be pioneers about it and try to figure it out. And some people, you end up like smashing up against the rocks. You have like people who lose their minds.
That part. It reminds
Yeah.
me of shout out to you, Flex, from the plug. He was talking about like the reason why he never did any hard drugs is because a lot of the times you can do a hard drug just once and
Yeah.
lose your mind forever.
Yeah. And that's a hard thing to know because I guess they understand it better now that you could have like a predisposition towards like schizophrenia, and like it could just be like one good psychedelic use can like
Open
unlock
that
it.
gate. Yeah.
Then you're just there forever. And I know like personally, probably like the people that ended up like the most messed up were usually messing around with LSD. And, so I mean, personally, I'm a much bigger believer in like the natural ones, like mescaline from cacti, like San Pedro cactus and peyote, like they're mescaline, and then yeah, the mushrooms. And but it's still like it is like risky. It's like a type of almost like venturing. Like I always love the idea, like this word psychonaut, it's like a explorer of the psyche. But like it is that you are kind of like venturing into the wilderness of your psyche in a way. And
What is it called?
psychonaut,
Psychonaut?
yeah, like an astronaut, but psyche.
Oh, okay. Psychonaut. Okay. Exploring of the psyche. Yeah, which can, you can end in places where you may not ever come back, right? You can get
Yeah,
lost, right?
I think there's some inherent danger, but it is like I believe that like humans and psychedelics, like we have a symbiotic relationship with them because like our psyche is such a powerful thing. Like so
Mm-hmm.
much of what we are comes from our consciousness. And so it's like it can become like it can be a great asset, but it can also harm us. Like so many people sort of like have suffering in their life that's self-inflicted, or it's created by a perception. There's like a paradigm that they exist in, and because our minds are so powerful, it's like real. Like you can have like hold like self-defeating beliefs, and like it really harms you in your life,
Yeah.
but ultimately it is just something that exists in your mind. And that is where like psychedelics are great for that because they kind of like help you step outside of that a little bit and can help you see that it is just a paradigm that you're creating, or just something that's existing in your mind.
Got you. Or the opposite, right? It can make you just go deeper into that belief. It can probably go the opposite
That
way
could
too.
happen, yeah. 'Cause I mean, I don't think they're for everybody. Like you probably want to start with a willingness to explore yourself,
Yeah.
because as like like what people call like bad trips. That's
Yeah, it is.
usually like you come across something that's very unpleasant. It can oftentimes be like unresolved trauma and things like that. But it's like ultimately a great way to heal. But like that first step of it, like being brought into the forefront of your consciousness, can often be really difficult. And it can
Definitely.
be terrifying.
Yeah.
And that's yeah.
And go ahead. Go ahead.
Like with psychedelics, like I think that can teach you that like that is almost like the greatest and most frightening thing that is in your life is within you. Like that's all, like psychedelics, it can sound kind of trivial to say like, like the worst the most terrifying thing, whatever it is that happens within that experience, it's all inside of you. You know, it's all just things within yourself. But you know, that can be very profound.
Yeah, super. It's profound in itself. That's a gem.
Hmm.
I totally forgot what I was gonna say, but yeah, that's. Oh yeah. And I think going back to like having like a teacher or a guide makes me think of Obi-Wan Kenobi for some reason. I'm not that big of a fan of Star Wars, but it makes me think like if I'm going to be sailing the ocean, would I rather go with someone who's sailed before, or do I want to figure out on my own?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, and it's kind of like, yeah, I would definitely want to go with someone who knows the ocean and they can just kind of like, hey man, like watch out for that rock. I'm gonna let you figure like it's your journey, but hey,
Right.
look out for this. This is fine. No, you know, like
Yeah.
makes more sense, you know, as opposed to like, hey, you're gonna figure out the hard way, and hard way might not be the way to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. That's a good metaphor. And it is also like in the same way, people like just not knowing, you know, sort of like dive into the deep end. Like it's almost like if you've never sailed before and like you try to go out into the ocean, like that's like gonna be very dangerous.
Yeah, and you don't even know how to swim.
Yeah.
You don't even know how to swim.
Good to start small.
You know, Kevin, I want to thank you so much for talking with us and sharing your story with us. I think you've mentioned this before, but I'm going to ask again. Um, how has being a part of this farming world changed your life?
Um, you know, really, I mean, at a certain point, it's kind of been this way for a while. Like it's a very central part of my life. It's I was talking about it like being like a spiritual practice, and to me, like that's very important. I feel like yeah, I've been doing it for like 13 years now, and like every time I'm out there, like it's still teaching me,
Hmm.
and yeah, like all those lessons get applied to life as well. Like it, you know, it's all patterns. So the lessons you can learn from a garden, you can apply them to life. And yeah, I don't know. Like to me, it seems like almost like having like a good exercise regimen, or like having positive people in your life. It's just like part of having like a healthy, balanced life.
Healthy relationship.
Yeah, that's yeah. Like even knowing how to have healthy relationships, I feel like gardening has helped me understand that a lot. Like it teaches you how to nurture things, and like the importance of like being open minded and also like being consistent. Yeah, a lot of like the difference between like a good gardener and a bad gardener is how consistent you can be.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. So someone that shows up every day, as opposed to someone's like,
Yeah.
maybe next week.
Right. Yeah. And similar, yeah, like with people, if you want a good relationship with a person, then like you have to kind of be observant of them, and you know, like with a garden, it is like not only being there to take care of its needs, but being able to notice when its needs do arise.
Give us some examples of uh, when a garden needs tending to, or like when it's asking for help.
Yeah. So like yeah, there's all sorts of things that can go wrong, and what's amazing is that there's like so many things that can go wrong.
Wow.
That like every year there's like something new, something
About
that
withered
I'd never
leaves.
experienced before. Yeah, like
When leaves are withering.
yeah, like you can see as like yeah, just after you've grown a plant for a while, you start to become familiar with like what a good healthy plant looks like and what an unhealthy plant looks like. Like a couple years ago, it's like really it was like kind of devastating when it happened. I was growing this tomato variety called Cherokee Purple. It is one of my favorite tomatoes. It's a really big tomato. It's just like very what they call like beefsteak varieties.
Yes.
They're like very thick, just like a giant good tasting tomato.
Mm-hmm.
But I found out that year that that particular variety is favored by this certain pest. I forget what the name of this bug is, but it like basically the bug will like bite the plant and like feed off of it, And when it does that, it passes on a virus that's fatal to the tomato.
Completely. Wow.
Yeah. And the way you tell is basically all the leaves start to curl up, like as if it's dehydrated. And
There's no saving it from that.
yeah, basically what happens. So that one, like I planted like 9 of them, and 7 of the 9 ended up getting this leaf curl disease.
Phoebe couldn't save her.
No, that's that one particular. I mean, it could sometime. Like I think at that time I didn't really have as many Phoebes in my garden, so maybe just need more Phoebes.
Yeah. Dang Phoebe. Um, speaking of pests, yeah, I think we were talking a while back. I think last year sometime, there was like this government thing that was happening because like there was going to be like this national wide pest
Or
that was going to, you know what I'm
talking about
talking
the
about?
quarantine that happened earlier this year.
Yeah, I was earlier this year. Can you
Yeah,
speak about that and like what that is and like does it happen often and can
yeah.
you explain a little bit more about that?
So I think like the quarantines. I guess that's more like something I'm like more recently aware of. It's hard to know. Like I've heard of ones happening before, but I think it's something you don't really hear about unless you're like in the agricultural world in some way. And so I guess it's one of the tough things about globalization. You know, like we have like the whole world is kind of connected, and so it's very easy to have things kind of come in that sort of like disrupt your ecosystem if left unchecked. And so the one earlier this year was the Oriental fruit fly, and it, from my understanding, came through citrus shipments that came out of Indonesia. It basically was just like um, this like pest. It was infected with the pest. They brought it over here, and then it gets wild, like goes out and starts spreading. And it was extra terrifying to like the agricultural industry because it targeted something like 200 different crops were
Wow.
affected by it. And like they mostly go after the fruit. Like unlike, we have fruit flies. Like there's always been fruit flies with fruit, but they don't really do a whole lot of noticeable damage. You can actually see them if you know what you're looking at because it just would be like a little tiny divot on the fruit. And but with the Oriental fruit fly, they actually will like turn the entire like fruit into just pulp. Like they actually like destroy a lot of the fruit. So yeah, it would affect. So like there's that like with globalization, I heard there's like on average about like 10 different pests that like kind of show up in California every year, like on average. So something that happens on a regular basis.
And
And
like as far as California, does like the government help protect?
mhm.
What do they do?
That's like actually got to hear a talk from an entomologist who like worked with California's government and helps like find solutions to these invasive pests.
Okay.
And so like one of the big ones before the Oriental fruit fly was called a citrus psyllid, and it's a
It's like a worm.
yeah, well, it's this weird kind of bug called a scale. And it's just sort of like this. I don't know, almost looks like a barnacle or something that's just like stuck to the plant, and
Okay.
it feeds off of the plant, and then usually they produce this like sugary excrement that ants love to harvest. And yeah, weird old ants. But yeah, like it was a really cool talk because he was talking about how the way they were able to find a solution to this citrus psyllid was actually a parasitic wasp that like specifically lays its eggs in the citrus psyllid.
Ah, and kills it from within.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then like a crazy little caveat with that was that because the ants like to harvest their excrement, the ants will actually protect them. And so in order to actually solve the problem, they also had to figure out a way to like keep the ants off of the plants. Because it was like they released this parasitic wasp and it was going out and laying its eggs in the psyllids. But if the ants were present, then the ant would like fend off the wasp.
Mm,
So like they found a way to keep the
the Ansat Bay.
yeah,
Okay.
but yeah,
And does the government give like any like type of subsidy to protect farmers from maybe losing their crops during this time?
yeah. I'm not sure about that. I was
Okay.
wondering a lot because with the last quarantine, like that, I would imagine would like affect a lot of people's
Yield.
like if they're growing for profit. Like
Yeah.
luckily the gardens where I was doing it like were nonprofits, but it was still like difficult to be growing like all this stuff that we like had to take precautions with. Like we couldn't just give away like all of the fruit that we had, like all of our peaches and nectarines and stuff.
Hmm.
Like we had to process them on site. Like we couldn't just take them off site
Okay.
out of fear of spreading the
Uh,
psyllid or
that makes
the Oriental fruit fly.
that makes sense. I had this vision for this area for a long time, which is turning because there's a lot of empty lots out here, empty places,
Yeah.
and I had a vision, and I even shared this with our current mayor, Helen Tran, and I had this very almost 10 years now, which is turning those spots into green spaces by turning them into greenhouses and making
Mhm.
them EBT friendly
Yeah, that'd be great.
and having um, kids work there as well, and they can leave with free food. So not only is it for the community, it makes a green space. It allows people who have EBT to buy food there, and also teaches the community how to grow as well. And it turns these ugly spaces. So
Yeah.
maybe one day it'll come true. Maybe we'll put our own paper together and build that ourselves or something. Who knows?
Yeah, I think that's doable. Yeah, for a while, um, yeah, because like after 2008, as maybe like when I really started to notice like how many of those plots we had, just how many just like empty, yeah. And heard from someone, it was a while back, but there might be some way to actually like if those things have been like dormant for a certain amount of time, like you can get like a lease, like not you don't have to pay for it, but like you can basically get like the the county or whatever to like give you permission to actually like grow on them.
Great. Like I said, I had this vision a long time ago, and I shared it with Helen Tran, and this is when she was running, and she said, "Yeah, let's do it."
Mm.
Um, I guess I got to get back to you, Miss Helen Tran, and maybe we can get that done. That'd be amazing for our city,
Would be yeah.
city of San Bernardino.